When I say the name Hideo Kojima, a couple things will probably come to mind, namely the Metal Gear franchise with its fantastic style from a story, gameplay, and artistic point of view. Hell, the art and even just the sound design are so iconic due to how well known the series is. It's bled into all forms of media, and most people will probably recognize at least a meme format or sound. This popularity stems from many people, including me, growing up with the franchise, and luckily for me, I didn't end up like Onision, who also did. Of course, despite leading one series, his name became legendary because that series had fairly consistent, very high quality, with every title being considered almost an event in gaming, especially after the thing that Death Stranding ended up being, and OD's interesting Game Awards trailer. Where Kojima said essentially nothing for 12 minutes, and the sadly deleted Silent Hill PT due to the infamous issue with Konami that led to him leaving and Konami stopping development on games in general, of which they've only recently restarted with Metal Gear Delta, which I'm genuinely cautiously excited for. This led to a lot of people, including me, patiently waiting for his next title. But I decided to do something a little different. Instead of looking ahead, me on my current mecha binge after From Software's Armored Core 6 looked to the past and found out about a long-forgotten Hideo Kojima game known as Zone of the Enders. One of speed and control, something that to this day we haven't really seen. Sure, Mecha has plenty of games such as breakneck speed third-person action games like Armored Core, turn-based games, tactical shooters, gacha games, and even fighting games. But hack and slash melee-based action games is something we realistically haven't really seen. Outside of old school mecha anime, of course, like the brutal combat of Evangelion, Gundam Wing, Iron Blood Orphans, Full Metal Panic, or even something like Knights of Sidonia. Mecha, in its early and traditional form, is an icon of anime in Japan that never really got truly represented in gaming. This representation was the goal Kojima had when producing Zone of the Enders, and for the most part, it came out absolutely fantastic. But before we talk about Zone of the Enders, I gotta lay some groundwork on exactly what we're going to cover, and I'll keep it simple. Zone of the Enders isn't just a video game, it's actually a multimedia project. Namely, there are a few side games and an animated movie and TV show, all of which I watched and were not half bad. They mainly exist to provide background and aren't totally required to enjoy the experience. If I'm to compare it to anything, it'd be how Final Fantasy XV was treated, but maybe a little worse on the quality side. which is kind of ironic as it did get a movie, but Kojima, who to this day talks about wanting to make a movie, wasn't involved. I swear, this guy will never be allowed to make a movie. He will just remain banished to the game dev depths. So that just leaves us with two main things that this video is actually about: Zone of the Enders and its sequel, Second Runner, or as it's known in Japan, Anubis. Both games cover an overarching war between an Earth government known as the UNSF against its outer colonies, who have begun to form and join a military faction known as Bahram in rebellion to oppression, but has slowly and steadily started to descend into a military oligarchy that's very oppressive. This story seems familiar, doesn't it? Meanwhile, we are put into the shoes of two pilots over two games: Leo and the Second Runner Dingo. Two people who don't want to be heroes or involved in the war, but now have no choice, as the war is dragged to them and the people they care about. These two games only average about 3 to 4 hours each, making them really short but focused experiences. I actually highly recommend you play, specifically the HD remasters, which just upscaled the games and didn't really add much outside of the Second Runner, but we will get there. Starting off with Zone of the Enders 1, which also came out with a demo of MGS2, a big reason why the game probably sold more than it would have. We are thrust far to the 22nd century, where humanity has reached out to the stars under the banner of the United Nations Space Force, with the help of Mecha called Levs, and a new resource known as Metatron, an incredibly valuable resource that can seemingly do anything, as its limits aren't quite known yet. This resource has become so valuable, it's caused a shift between the spacefaring Enders and the increasingly impressive UNSF, causing Bahram to be formed as a revolutionary force for freedom, with them taking territory under their control. We begin in such a territory they wish to liberate in the first game, being on a colony known as Antilia that orbits Jupiter. It's a relatively advanced colony that looks like some of the colonies from Gundam, which just recently was used by the UNSF to manufacture 2 orbital frames, the next step of mecha warfare. Leading us and our main character, Leo Stenbock, a young, immature, reluctant, and slightly cowardly boy, to be caught in the middle of the war and thrust into the role of a runner, this world's term for pilot of the incredibly powerful Jehudi frame, where he must learn to grow up and lose his innocence if he wishes to survive and do the right thing. If this sounds incredibly familiar, it's part of the series' obvious inspiration from the classic anime inspiration, such as Amuro and Gundam, or honestly, the more scarily accurate Shinji from Evangelion, which we will get to that in the story section because, oh man, do I have things to say about that, and a lot about this game in general. Going back a little to my roots, we have to talk about visuals first, because man, this game is something unique. This game splits itself into 2 parts. The first is in-game cutscenes and gameplay that have a really distinct visual style, which isn't remotely surprising as Yoji Shinkawa, whose art you might recognize from Metal Gear Solid, was one of the lead artists, with some of the things looking really Metal Gear in this series. Environments are somewhat blocky, open, tight, and pretty well lit. There's admittedly not much to look at here, mainly because it's a PS2 game and they cheaped out a little on the environments to make the game look good, which made some areas exceptionally empty feeling or even just bland. Enemy and ally mecha models on the other hand are actually incredibly highly detailed, with a style I've never seen outside of this game, mixing mecha with Egyptian mythology with a lot of curves, angles, smooth parts, and a distinctively human and bug-like appearance. Although the term for cockpit was taken quite literally.
An impressive cop.
And for once, doesn't have a non-set explanation like Quiet from Metal Gear Solid 5. This time just being because it's funny, and I respect that, I really do. The cockpit does, however, have one more thing, which I've only seen done maybe once in Titanfall 1 and 2, and that is during cutscenes when talking to Jehudi's AI, known as Ada. It's a literal cockpit. You just sit in and get to take a look around environments, which is cool and I appreciate it. Now, the second part of this game style, unlike everything we just talked about, has aged horribly. And that's pre-rendered CGI cutscenes that play from time to time during important moments and are just the worst, with stiff animation and really ugly character models. Like, yes, I understand this came out in 2003, and this type of thing was totally normal for the time, but these are like Beast Wars levels of ugly, and I like that show.
Foraging through the garbage! You're enders, all of you!
It's all Leo's fault! He made us come here! No.
You have such good friends, don't you, boy of enders? issues. Now, what will you do? Will you escape all by yourself? Or will you punch me out to save your friends?
They're relatively stiff, low poly, ugly, and voice acted quite badly, which is a whole other issue we need to get to. And it's really jarring going from this kind of cringy cutscenes to this weirdly high resolution gameplay. Like, yes, I'm playing the HD remaster, but the OG also has this issue. Luckily, all of this is pretty easy to overlook and doesn't impact the actual selling point of this game, the gameplay, of which carries over both games for the most part, meaning we could kind of kill two birds with one stone. Playing Zone of the Enders is one of the few times I can say, even though I've been gaming my whole life, I don't think I've played something like this before. Jehudi controls relatively simply, with you being able to go up, down, left, or right, lock on and off targets, boost, which you can tap for a quick dodge, and even have their own animations based on the direction. Feeling really smooth when you do so, kind of reminding me how smooth Ace Combat felt back in like 2017, but this was way back in 2003. In combat, you have a couple of main and sub attacks when close to an enemy. Pressing attack will cause you to use the admittedly pea shooter feeling gun, which shoots and bursts and struggles with actually hitting targets due to the mobility of this game, requiring you to maintain a somewhat steady view of the target. Getting close will change the reticle and enable you to use your amazing feeling melee, which hacks and slashes at the enemies with a fairly nice sounding attack. There's really good feedback when you do this, and it feels great for the most part. The only downside is there's no combos besides spamming it, so it gets a little spammy feeling, but it isn't the worst. It even feels nicer when fighting one of the melee enemies and you get caught in this back and forth block and slice at each other where you can dash around the enemy. Not only is this visually cool, but from a gameplay perspective, it feels really good too. There's also a grab which does exactly what it sounds like, but you can then throw the enemy to do decent damage. Both of the distance ideas can also be used while dodging for 2 more attacks. At range, you shoot missiles at your targets to do okay damage and have pretty poor lock-on. But when you're in close range, you do a lunge attack that does a ton of damage and carried me through a large portion of combat encounters. While not being attacked, you can also interact with Metatrons to heal any damage you take as well, either by picking them up or destroying squads that says it has one. The last attack Jehudi has at his disposal is a charged attack that followed the same philosophy of close and ranged. You can hold the dash button to charge up a charge attack that does insane damage. Unleashing a range attack causes you to throw a ball of energy that can kill enemies as little to 2 hits. The close ranged attack causes you to spin, damaging everything and pushing them back. Both of these really good, and you really need to weave these into your combos to do decent damage. And this just leaves us with sub-weapons. The awful sub-weapons. These guys are unlocked when you find them, some being missable and each do something different. There are about 10 and about 3 that are actually useful, with this category being mostly dedicated to puzzle weapons like the sniper rifle that was never useful, or the javelin, which is so bad even the enemies couldn't land a single hit.
What are you aiming at? What are you aiming at?
The useful ones that are good are like absurdly good, like the gauntlet and the comet outputting crazy damage, while the geyser is actually good for stunning enemies if you're in a pickle. Enemies that unfortunately are not many and aren't too varied. There are a grand total of, and I am not joking, 3 unmanned enemy types that you will see in semi-open areas where you can pick and choose what and when you want to fight. The Raptor, which is the quick melee guy we talked about earlier, who fights mainly in close range, but can swap to the Javelin, which you will most certainly miss, making him not really a threat. The Cyclops, that specializes in 1-2 punches that can do a decent amount of damage. In combination with big health, you certainly do not want to get caught by a bunch of these and take them on one at a time. The last enemy is the Mummy Head, an awful, horrible enemy that has the most health and is focused on range with these pea shooters, which aren't dangerous. What are dangerous is this stupid laser, which they can and will shoot forever, and it can melt you on every difficulty, especially hard.
Out one day. Can you not do like the funny laser? I would really appreciate this. I'm gonna keep going till he stops. Are you going to stop?
The only depth to combat when it comes to these guys is sometimes a big one will show up that's labeled as a commander, and they will enhance the squad with them, meaning you kind of want to shoot down this commander first. But let's actually talk about the difficulty of this game really quick, because it's interesting. The game isn't hard at normal, and I would say for the most part is quite easy. It's actually what I'd recommend though, as very hard and hard are genuinely incredibly difficult with absurd enemy damage. It's one of those things where encounters aren't changed, just increased, and enemy damage values are increased as well, which doesn't help when you get stunned by taking any amount of damage, even the minuscule hits. This makes the game's mini bosses an absolute nightmare at times, but in order to avoid spoilers, we'll check that out in the story section, because right now we have one pretty bad fundamental part of this game and its sequel that ties into it, and that's the localization, namely the audio department. Audio design in this game is fantastic in combat and the world, with everything sounding great, especially Jehudi when fighting enemies and its AI Ada.
We will hold battle position. Colony damage increasing due to battle. We have shot down the enemies.
But that's the only voice actor who does well, with everyone else doing a pretty bad job that I'm not really sure what happened.
Enough of that. What the hell is happening to you?
Leo, let's get away from here.
You're the runner of Bravo? That frame's not a kid's toy. Get out of there now.
I'm not a kid.
There's the proof that you still are a kid.
What?
I thought a woman would be plenty. All right, I'm your target.
I don't like to blame voice actors, and I don't really think it's their fault, and more so a direction issue, with most voices being really bland and lacking emotion 90% of the time, making some instances really comical or really annoying, with enemies having a very small amount of voice lines.
How's this? How's this? How the hell can you say it's a new model? How the hell can you say it's a new model?
It's not confirmed, but I assume this issue is the same that Xenoblade Chronicles had, where they sent voice lines to actors and didn't give any sort of context leading to, well, this. It also could just be a case of being an old anime game that had pretty poor localization, because that was pretty common back in the day. Luckily, the Second Runner's HD remasters had some voice work redone, so some of the voice actors do a far better job than others. We actually get a glimpse of this as soon as our story starts, with Leo losing his friends to the Barham invasion, after he ditched them to some light oppression by the UNSF's hands. This leads to Leo conveniently falling directly right into Jehudi's cockpit, with Ada, its AI, ready to assist.
Good morning. Ready for combat operation.
We fight off our first battle with a handful of drones and a literal ace pilot known as Viola. Do we have a bit of stream lore with her? Just you wait. Who we beat so hard she retreats.
Damn, I was too careless.
Viola, evacuate now.
What? Are you crazy? It's just a kid. I can take care of him even without weapons.
I repeat, evacuate now. You have other things to do, don't you?
You embarrassed me this time, so look forward to the next time. See you again, boy.
Yes, this is very anime and requires a bit of an extension of disbelief, and personally, it was a little hard for me to take this game, or her, who's supposed to be a recurring and overarching villain of this game, remotely serious, because we just beat her in a 1v1 with zero upgrades or any sort of skills, considering Leo is a literal untrained child, which he shows immediately after getting contact with the Atlantist, a UNSF ship who wants Jehudi, giving him a mission to transport Jehudi to a transport company that will take it to Mars for a large battle. Leo has a bit of a breakdown given his current situation and wants to not help, something he relatively quickly is talked out of.
Listen.
No, you listen. I could get attacked again. And who the hell are you anyways? Why do you want this machine so much?
You fought well. We're just asking for a little more of your help. Please.
I suppose you want me to kill again.
Well,
I want nothing more to do with any of you. Go kill or whatever you want. Just leave me out of it. I've got to be going.
then a lot more people will die.
What?
Everybody will die. Your friends, your family, every single one of them. We can't let them get a hold of Jehuti. If they do, it will be the end of this colony. No, it may be the end of civilization as we know it. You must, please, help us.
Move it, Leo! Help, Leo!
You say I can, but how? I can't drive this thing.
Yes, you can. I saw you do it, and I know you can do it again. Please, help us.
All right. I'll do it just this one time, but that's all I'll do.
Now,
Okay.
Leo is a child, and I understand given everything that's happened, kind of freaking out, and I don't blame him at all here. But it gets really annoying that he does this freaking out and complaining for 90% of the game, making me less sympathetic and more really annoyed at him over time. But either way, we continue on the mission after this, going area to area looking for more upgrades to help our way. Fighting our first boss, who has like 3 voice lines and isn't too difficult, it just has some janky hitboxes. Getting more time with Leo and Ada actually makes me quite like what they did with Ada a lot, with her having a great contrast with Leo, namely that she's an AI who's strictly based on logic and not emotions, while Leo is the complete opposite, being completely emotional all the time, even taking us to defend the area he knew as his home, where we meet our third party member Sylvise, one of Leo's actually real friends who, like Leo, is very emotional, but in contrast once again, wants to help as many people as possible, while he just wants to not do anything.
Sylvise! That is you, isn't it, Sylvise? Are you all right, Sylvise?
Leo? Is that you, Leo? What are you doing here?
What are you doing here? You must evacuate to the shelter immediately.
But the children may still be in the church. So...
You're going to the church? That's impossible. It's suicide to even try.
But...
What? Are you crazy? There'll be no one there anyway.
But... You can't know for certain unless you go.
Forget about them. You can't do anything if you die too.
Well, I'm not dead yet.
Driving him and Ada to help as many people as possible in these missions where property damage and casualties should be kept as low as possible, as death isn't great for the economy, but also can give you a bad ending at a certain point if you go out of your way to kill everything. I'm not gonna lie, it might be my obsession with Evangelion, but the fact that the blue-haired girl convinced annoying child to do something he really didn't want to, the Shinji Ikari comparisons couldn't be avoided, and at a certain point, I kinda just forgot his name and just started calling him Shinji habitually. These next following areas are just a few repetitive combat environments where we get more time with our small team, bonding to some extent, before reaching our first literal barrier, which is a microwave energy field blocking off half the colony and where we need to go. You see, everything on this colony uses microwaves as power, and they use something known as the extra power system to handle and regulate it, a system that's now being used by Barham to cut off most of the station. Our goal is to shut down its 3 parts in order to progress. Firstly, we have to disable this tower, and we need a physical weapon to do so, since our energy weapons don't work past this field. We find this in the form of a sniper rifle in a previous area, where we meet these nodes that hide stuff. Destroying these can reveal a bunch of things and are generally worth it. Unfortunately for me, I haven't played a proper shooter with a controller in 10 years, so my aim is so horrendous, I ended up finding the one use for the phalanx subweapon that does so little damage it normally isn't worth using. The sniper takes us to aim labs essentially, where we shoot these orbs to shut down the system. And this is pretty much the one time you can use it because I don't think it actually does damage to anything, and it's usually so slow you're forced into melee combat fairly quickly. Our next goal is to now shut down 2 different satellites. You do this by going deeper into the bunkers and destroying the generators, one of which requires us to control an enemy raptor for a segment which is kind of neat considering it has a simple, but good enough moveset for a short segment like this. Attempting to move along, we see the new area we are welcome to, namely the production facilities Jehudi and its sibling Anubis were made in. Then we get shot down by a boss and a virus put inside Jehudi, making us take instant kill damage from any source. Metatron's not heal us, and Ada a little funky sounding.
I detect a high energy reaction ahead.
Too late! What?
It will have no influence on our battle capabilities. I deduce it to be a raptor type. I can give you 13 different clear-cut reasons if you wish me to.
Ada, what are you talking about?
The estimated superiority index is 50%. You can easily dispose of him.
You say easily to win over that gigantic thing?
Certainly. Your irrational actions have driven this frame into a crisis.
I have managed to learn Jonathan's guiding principles.
Enough of
It's actually here where it becomes almost like a cover shooter in this area where you have to save people once again, but you have the one-hit KO mechanic, making this kind of a fun and nice mix-up, especially when we go help a bunch of people and Leo has to admit he went out of his way to do this, even if it was by our controls. We then fix Ada up at her home, which makes her acts a little different than normal, which concerns Leo.
Let me begin the Ada system recovery.
Can you do that?
Recovery is complete.
I will begin controlling Jehuti again.
Ada?
Yes?
Are you back to normal now?
It is difficult for me to make that judgment.
If you are asking whether there is no more difficulty with the virus, the answer would be yes.
You're okay now. That's great.
I have already deleted the infected modules. I am sorry for the trouble.
What did you say?
I repeat, I am sorry for the trouble.
That's okay.
Let us continue the mission.
I actually like this, as seeing him genuinely care is nice for a change, and he's starting to show a little sympathy for others. But it's not quite all there. We then return to kill the boss that needed us to get ourselves fixed, and acquire the decoy in order to dodge its super heavy attack, in order to move to the last section of the game, the mountains. But even with the end in sight, Leo is still whining after receiving his new orders to deliver Ada to the man known as Thunderheart. A very Kojima name, which is at least better than Deadman.
More fighting? Do you mean I have to do it all again?
Of course. What are you in? It's a fighting orbital frame, isn't it?
I'm not like you guys. Don't think that I'm a killer just like you.
What?
I only came here because I was told to give this to you. So hurry up. Come and get it. I've had enough of this.
Leo.
Elena, I can't understand you either. People will be killed, you understand? Me and Selvis, we all might be killed over this.
We all know that story.
No, you don't. That's why Alan, one of your colleagues, had to die. You don't give a damn about those who die. You think it goes with the territory.
That's enough, you little twerp. Alan was Elena's boyfriend, and my best friend. Of course we miss him.
What?
I don't care if you're a boy or a complete stranger. You have no idea how important your task is, do you?
Thunderheart is actually a nice character for Leo, as he calls him out on his bullshit and tells him to just get over it and stop complaining, even if Leo is right to be afraid and react the way he is. The little sob story given here, where I actually forgot Selvis was here, does feel a little weird though, as it feels like they realized they needed to force this kid to have a realization, and did it within the last, 20 minutes. This area is very linear for the most part, as it's the endgame to deliver Ada, with just a few combat encounters as we progress to this dam, followed by a boss that, while not remotely hard, absolutely tanked my frame rate for some reason, and it's the only place this ever happened. What the? Even looking at footage of other people playing this game, that seemed to happen to them too, so I'm not really sure what went on with this area. But immediately after this, we run into Viola again, and this is where the forbidden lore arrives. For some reason, you know who you are. We made the bit that Viola is a creepy stalker to this child, which is admittedly technically not false.
Oh, so it's you who got her all flustered.
What?
What? I detect an enemy presence ahead.
That's...
You're doing very well.
Shut up!
How did you feel when you killed them?
Shut up! Shut up! Ah! You killed my friends!
Well, what if I did kill them?
Damn it!
Come on, come at me.
To be honest, this almost feels like a Misato situation, but she's evil. This fight once again is pretty easy, besides when she grabs us, but luckily, anime time allows us to talk while this happens, which does give us a nice moment where Leo wants to save Ada from sacrificing herself.
There is no way out. I have added emergency escape to the main menu. Please select emergency escape.
What do you mean?
After detaching the cockpit, I will blow up Jehuti.
No!
I do not understand. What do you mean by no?
Just shut up. Let me think. There must be something we can do.
What you are doing is a contradiction. You say you want to protect people. Are your life and your passengers' lives not also to be protected?
Shut up! No means no.
There is little time. Please understand. What exactly do you not want to do?
You will get out with me.
What?
I did it!
At least he's consistent.
Beating Viola, she gets a tad creepy after we establish the bit.
I never expected a kid like you would be my match.
You brought this on yourself. You killed. I had no choice.
Why don't you just kill me now?
I will.
Why did you stop? What's with you? Kill me.
Don't say that. I won't.
You'd better keep this in mind, boy. In battle, every time you wonder whether or not to do something, you'll end up losing.
And Leo actually spares her, which Ada allows this time. But she informs them that she seems to care, with her voice almost sounding like it cracks, though she's just an AI.
I must eject the cockpit next time. Do not repeat what you did last time.
What? Yes.
I am a mere program. A lifeless program. What you did to save me was very illogical.
Talking to Thunderheart, we are informed this colony is about to crash, and he requests Leo to help once again, since he's actually a better pilot than him. A trained pilot, once again, but I digress. Once again, he doesn't feel like it, but Sylvise talks him into it with this nice moment.
Let's go.
What?
Let's go and find them, Leo. This is something you can do.
Sylvise.
I'll come with you. So let's go.
No, you can't. It's too dangerous. We were just lucky that we survived. Next time we may not be so lucky.
I know. And I know you'll protect me. Right?
Sylvise.
Which is immediately interrupted by her being shot right after by the yandere herself. This action is what finally kicks Leo out of his self-pity party and makes him grow up a little, even if it's within the last 20 minutes of this game. Leo pursues the Jehuti and has a nice heart-to-heart with Ada, where he lets out why he is the way he is, finally shedding a little bit of that immaturity to someone he seems to have trusted and grown attached to, right before we reach the core, where Viola has questionable dialogue.
If you try to interfere, I'll kill you.
Why do you want him so badly? He's only a kid.
Only a kid, is he? It's not just that frame that makes him so good.
We have several objectives here. First, we have to disarm the bombs that will destroy the colony, which is simple. Just hold them in charge to disarm them. Just don't shoot them like I did for the first try. And I don't know why I thought this was a good idea, but I did it. We then skirmish with Viola one final time, where upon her death, she literally trauma dumps on him till she dies.
I was beaten by such a naive brat.
Viola.
I have lost everything. I survived many battles. I lost my parents and my lover. I don't have the functions of a woman now. Even then, I have continued to live. Right. To survive was the only purpose to life. To survive is my life. In battle, there's a slight gap between life and death. Those who were killing were themselves dead a moment later. I killed innocent children and even my comrades to save myself. Soaking in their blood and eating their flesh, I managed to live this long. It is not a matter of my luck. It was only my vibrant power that kept me alive. I survived through my own strength. You ruined it for me. Who the hell are you? What am ever? Have you ever experienced any hardship in your life?
Jokes aside, she did feel like a kinda weird character. She's interesting thematically, being the rival that forces him to grow up and realize he can't save or spare anybody. And she is a decent character in the animes, but here she kind of comes off as this obsessive weird runner who dumps her entire plot during like the last 30 seconds of her screen time, which felt wasted and abrupt. And on top of that, after this moment, Commander Noam of the Armed Forces personally comes to deal with us in Anubis, which right now, given Jehuti's incomplete state, we can't beat him, making this a Darth Vader situation where our only hope is to escape to a cutscene, which is the literal end of the game, where we learn in a twist that Ada's mission actually involves her self-destruction, wasting her life like she told Leo not to, ending with everyone seemingly happy besides, Ada's impending sacrifice. This ending overall just feels okay. I personally was like, that's it, and was hoping for the sequel to be able to build on top of it, which it did quite well, and I really liked it. Although the story part is a little odd because apparently originally there wasn't gonna be a second game, but it ended up getting announced a year after the first game's release. So who knows, especially since the second runner actually directly continues the plot 2 years later, with you taking the role of a new runner. Hence the name. Our new runner is known as Dingo Egret, a well-known deserter of the Bar military turned miner turned unwilling pilot of Jehuti. After an assault on an operation gets him killed and his lifeline tied to Jehuti after being revived, leading him and Ada on one final suicide mission to Mars. When it comes to sequels, the second runner is one of the few games that does almost everything right. Zone of the Enders already had a good foundation and style, so it didn't even need to do much here to improve. Instead, they looked to just refine and fix a couple of issues and things that worked well. Firstly, when looking at the visuals, they have just been improved across the board with higher res textures while maintaining the art style that was absolutely fantastic. That's until you look at two big things. One is the CG cutscenes that looked awful aren't here anymore, replaced instead by fully animated cutscenes that are artistically great, reminding me of Gundam Wing. The only downside to these, which is common with remasters this time, is their weirdly low resolution, but it's not really a big deal. Maintaining the style, we even have this character portrait that moves in the cockpit when talking to characters, which you can even move yourself like you're a camera. This is really cool. But the lip sync is questionable at best. Like how is he even talking here?
Save your life.
I don't remember. When did you say that?
Just before, when you nearly died.
I don't remember.
And to be honest, you can get some pretty interesting angles if you look for them.
Nice.
This game also has a few brand new game modes for you to sink your teeth into. Namely, special missions that consist of challenges just for fun that let you play as even enemies. You can also do that in this game's multiplayer. The movesets are simple and there isn't too much depth, but it's still a fun feature that is here. And speaking of, let's shift our gaze to gameplay. It's once again improved on every single level outside of one thing. The improved stuff includes every part of combat and removing the semi-open world for a more focused linear experience. Melee, for instance, is the same, but has a finisher to the combo now so you can throw them up or down to do more damage if they hit something. You can't juggle like in Devil May Cry, but it still feels good regardless. The gun has the least changes with just doing more damage more accurately. Dash attack likewise are still great here, with the missiles now being able to track tons of targets and hit pretty much every time. Charged attacks received a slight change as well, with the ranged attack now having the ability to be charged for more damage, while the melee, once again, stays the same but can be chained. The best change to combat actually comes with the grab and soft reworked sub-weapons. Remember how I said in the first game they're mostly useless? Well, here they thankfully all have their own use and are quite good in their own ways. For instance, the things that were good before, like the Gauntlet of Comment, are still here and are just as good, while things like the Phalanx had its damage cranked and the useless sniper was just removed. They also now share the newly introduced meter with charged attacks, justifying this damage change, forcing you to decide on what's best for that encounter, especially since you can no longer grab while having a sub-weapon up as they share the same slot. To account for this, it has been buffed by adding a few features. You of course can still throw enemies, but also now spam the button to spin them around to use like a melee weapon or a stronger throw. Or just straight up grab stuff off the environment like a pipe or shield, and it's often a mechanic used for boss encounters. Which is the last part of combat we have to talk about before the story section. Bosses in this game feel more prevalent here than it did in the last game, with more bombastic events against actually named characters. This is good as there's stakes or interest in the fights that weren't really there before, as they kinda were just big guys you gotta kill to progress the game. The issue, however, arises with the actual gameplay part of fighting bosses. You see, these bosses, while visually really cool, are actually really dumb from a gameplay POV, as these bosses generally consist of a gimmick that you need to do over and over to get to a damage base, opposed to having movesets that you just have to play around and learn. Now, some of these gimmicks are really cool, making some of the most memorable bosses, like this one guy where you fight in complete darkness, trusting Jehuti's comms and radar to guide you around attacks. And others like this one where I have to grab enemies so the bosses run into it, were absolutely insufferable. This is admittedly probably my fault because I did play at the hardest difficulty, which I generally do not recommend because of those bosses. But even on lower options, they weren't too fun just because the enemies kind of annoying mechanics. Getting to the story, we're put in the shoes of Dingo Egret, a former soldier for Barham who deserted and now resigns with Metatron miners on a routine mining mission on Callisto. Except on this Callisto protocol, Dingo stumbles upon the abandoned orbital frame Jehuti and is forced to fight the Barham forces sent to retrieve it and kill all the miners, including our first boss of the game, Ken in Artjet. A fight we win fairly decisively, considering we haven't piloted in years.
So you want this frame, don't you?
Maybe.
Even if you're bar-armed, that's too rough.
It sure is.
Who's the commander?
You think I'll tell?
Wait!
A fight we then take directly to Barham's flagship with intents of downing it from the inside. We face little resistance in the ship, fighting mostly old enemies from the last game and a new enemy that spawns enemies. Before, right where we need to be, we are met by Viola. God damn it, she's back! She just won't leave. And in her fight, she has one voice line. Given she's now an AI and just remembers Leo, the I'm coming part is not remotely helping the awful lore we made up. Now, in order to defeat her, we get our first gimmick, and that's using the weapons you can grab to stun her before being able to damage her. You actually have to do this, and you cannot damage her any other way. This is a boss you can clear very quickly, but in my least favorite trend, we lose in the cutscene to Nomen and Anubis.
Give that orbital frame back. I remember you. Nomen. It's Dingo.
the commander that attacked Adelia, and a person who knew Dingo. And let's be honest, this guy is a villain. Just look at him. Someone designed like this was born to be a villain. It's here we learn Dingo is a deserter, and Dingo gives Ken, who has a boob socks of all things, gets put in a chokehold by him. An interesting way to threaten someone immediately, before Noman arrives with an offer for Dingo to come back, because quite simply, he likes the guy, but when refused, isn't afraid to just gun him down, much to Ken's shock.
Come back. I like you.
You make me sick.
Ken, out of pity or maybe need, instead of disposing him, decides to make some use of Dingo as well as giving him another chance at life. She, over a 2-month period, pulls a Lazarus project and revived Dingo by making Jehudi his lifeline, killing him quickly if he tries to leave, making him kind of a dreadnought from 40k, but in this case at least he has Ada with him, who now shows some attitude.
Ada, please look after him.
If I have to.
Nice reminder of Leo's lasting impact on her, especially since we don't have answers to exactly what happened to Leo after the main game. And as a side note, I really don't understand how Ken got away with this for 2 months of all things. You'd think Noman, the commander who's like super oppressive to everybody, would find out one way or another where all these resources are going and why this is happening. Anyways, Ken explains in simple terms we are heading to Mars to borrow superweapon Auman, since she's a UNSF spy trying to help the failing war effort there. Shortly after waking up, we sneak our way through the ship to an exit by leaving no witnesses. Along the way, we get a distress signal from a man known as Taper, a UNSF soldier on a mission to support the war effort on Mars, who somehow managed to sneak onto the ship and hide in a cargo bay with his whole Lev. Dingo additionally doesn't want to help, but is convinced by the promise of cutting off his life support.
Yes, please. I've got an important mission to carry out.
Important mission?
We are helping our friends on Mars.
Who did you say you're helping?
There are many people who can't escape from Vasilia after taking away the Vector Cannon.
Vector Cannon?
Please help Taper Dingo. We need to get it.
I don't know.
I can order Ada to stop feeding energy to you.
You'll what?
Ada?
Damn. Okay, I'll do it.
So we go search for our boy and we have to shoot his proper container to knock on it. It was honestly kind of sketchy doing this, as the other ones get instantly destroyed when you shoot them, so I was afraid of killing him. But luckily, he's the exception. Finding him, we discover he's a slightly cowardly man who's doing his best to help people. But sadly, we are given the escort mission, oh we just love these, and gotta take him to the cargo launcher so he can escape. The escort actually isn't that bad, but it's really annoying when for some reason this game lets you target allies making friendly fire a thing, but it doesn't really feel like it needed to be here or fits into this game at all. For now, it's not too bad, but during later sections with more enemies, it can get annoying. After getting him out, we make our exit as well, landing on Mars, where we see Barum has positively destroyed the planet and has begun to take over a large portion of it. The Space Force themselves managed to put up a fight, taking out a large portion of Barum's forces, but have been almost routed, with very little survivors left, trying to form one final attack. Ken additionally gives us some much needed but kinda long-winded exposition on why we're here, which I'll let her explain.
1 month ago, the Space Force was almost wiped out except for a few remnants. We attacked Vasilia County, the Barum foothold, with the total force we had then.
That was thoughtless.
Certainly. We knew what was going to happen. The Space Force suffered destruction, so there's not much time to destroy the remaining forces at the enemy base. Although we did find a special thing.
That's the Vector Cannon Taper mentioned.
The Vector Cannon is a weapon that delivers a high-energy wave by space compression. The outer shield of the enemy fortress Auman defends from invasion with a mass dislocation created by space compression. The Vector Cannon is the only weapon that can nullify that defense and pierce it.
Urenbeck catapult, orbital frame, Vector Cannon, so they're all byproducts of Metatron.
It's a bad habit of mankind to want to use its new toys immediately. Don't you agree? However, the military unit has been missing in Vasilia since they acquired the Vector Cannon. Taper, who you met on Deimos, must have come to get it back.
Why is it so important?
Dingo, Do you know about the Almon project?
I only recognize the name.
When Dr. Rikoa Hardiman was in good health.
Noman's father.
After Dr. Hardiman died, his son Ridley, that is Noman, took over command of the plan. He then made a full-scale model. Almon is a huge military fortress that uses a great amount of Metatron to construct weapons of mass destruction. When it is fully operational, it won't make sense for Earth to send any amount of forces against it. Almon will have over 1 million times the power of Anubis, and you've seen the damage that can do. Can you imagine what it will be like?
Why did Noman want to get Jehuti? He's already got a great weapon, hasn't he?
Actually, Anubis and Jehuti were developed as part of the Almon plan.
What do you mean?
Those two were a key element in starting Almon. That plan was made by Dr. Hardiman. Only those two machines can make Almon move or stop.
So, Noman has already got Anubis. He probably thinks Jehuti is a bother.
He either wants it or wants it destroyed.
Shortly after, we are attacked by the Narita, small but fast new enemies that attack in groups. But those aren't the real foe here. The real enemy is someone familiar sounding in the Vic Viper, demanding Jehuti's return.
Shield, give me back Jehuti!
This boss requires you to be fast and on your toes, as damage phases are short and he flies away invincible to damage. It's kind of annoying on hard and I ended up just cheesing the hell out of it. Beating him enables us to talk with who we thought it was, Leo, but a little grown up and wearing the Ninja Blevins hair. After the battle, Leo explains to Dingo exactly why he's here, and more importantly, Ada's real goal. That being blowing herself up at Almon in order to destroy it, just like we learned at the end of the last game. However, for obvious reasons right now, Dingo doesn't really want that to happen. Leo claims he will destroy Almon in our stead, so she doesn't have to kill herself. But Dingo shuts him down and says that he's just gonna do it himself, with his signature tagline of "just shut up," which he says a lot. Like, I want to kill chaos a lot.
What's your name?
You shut up! I'm Dingo! Storm Company, I'm coming to help.
Who is this?
Don't talk too much!
What should I do now? Dingo!
Shut up! Just shut up!
Our new goal is to reach the city of Basilia in order to help out. We do this by breaking through a gate, in which we actually have to destroy 2 different generators. This section is actually quite long, and is mostly just combat sections the whole way through, with not much really going on. That is until we find Viola once again, who has a big shield yet again. But this time, her gimmick wants us to grab a shield and block her dash with it to open her up for damage. When doing enough, she locks us in the Thunderdome during anime time once again. Here we can damage whenever, but if we get knocked against the wall, it stuns us or her. Utilizing those walls makes this fight a breeze. I'd actually recommend the Gauntlet weapon as it's really good at pushing her into them. And then when we finally kill her, we deal with the shadow of Viola for good, hopefully. Getting out, we realize this battle's brought us to the city we meant to come to anyways. A city actually under siege by the Space Force's Taper went to leak up with. People that when we speak to them, don't care remotely about the population, as they see them as traitors and less than them, making this the only segment where we have to defend the city against damage like the first game, but this time we have to help allies and kill enemies while reducing the damage both of them cause. It's a nice mix-up, but the targeting made this a tad annoying. Clearing all enemies has us take a tunnel directly to an energy facility of Almonds, a tunnel that has a train heading directly through it to kill our allies that are already there, which we must stop since they have the vector cannon we need. The fight is pretty cool and has us destroy train car by train car till we reach the front, with enemies harassing us along the way, which you can shove into a wall and watch fly behind us during this high-speed chase. It also feels much better than the AC-5 train fights, so this thing's actually pretty cool and I liked it. Along the way, Ken gives us a bit of a heart-to-heart where she explains her reasoning and gets a little emotional.
Dingo?
It's you.
I've just arrived on Mars. You know they know where the Lev team and the vector cannon are.
I know. I'm coming near it too.
I'll catch you soon.
Noman will find you.
It's alright. Now he's crazy about activating Almon.
When I was in Noman's unit, one of the team was a spy from the Space Force.
Huh?
For some months, no one in the unit suspected him. Not even me.
And then?
But only Noman suspected. I don't know why.
What happened to this guy?
No idea. Next day I saw his left hand in the garbage.
Did it come off when they shook hands?
Stop acting tough.
You are joking, aren't you? It's not funny, though.
No. Since nothing happened to you while working alongside Noman, I can't believe that you're a real spy from the Space Force.
So?
Tell me the truth. What are you?
You don't trust me, do you?
Are you surprised?
Let me tell you something. You concealed yourself after the final mission. What were you doing after that?
It's none of your business.
If you wished, you could have returned to Bahram.
Stop it.
You made up your mind to hide out in Callisto, and you left your comrades to their fate. Isn't that right?
Shut up!
Do you think I can trust such a man? You're just another. Even so, I still trust you.
Huh?
Even now I hear rumors about you. When you were in Bahram, you were not only an excellent runner, but also popular with your pals. They said that only you could match Noman, so I revived you.
And tried to use me.
If you had returned to Bahram and stopped Noman, things would have been different.
Easy to say.
I'm also trying to...
You always depend on others to make it, don't you?
I came to Mars, didn't I?
Arriving, however, we discover another orbital frame attacked and destroyed our allies near the facility. That frame also has our cannon. And it was another case of me lying, because the corporate is Viola, of all people. Back again with new enemies that grab you. Easily the worst enemy, as the grab is as to avoid, you can't escape it, and it does a ton of damage, so keep your distance or block when you're about to get grabbed, is what I'd say if you didn't need them to kill Viola here. You see, this time we have to block her hits again, except we have no shields, just these guys. So we have to grab the enemies to open her up for damage, which is a little hard given they want to grab you as well. And it's really finicky. Often, sometimes me going in for a grab led to me getting grabbed from a weird angle. On hard, I absolutely hated this fight due to how finicky it felt, due to Viola having just that weird timing, not being able to hold on to enemies too long, and spent way too much time here because of it. The cannon, however, is awesome as a reward. It's a cannon that requires you to stand on the ground and charge it to attack. It's a bit gimmicky because of that, but it's really cool when you get it off.
Shift to vector cannon mode. All energy lines connected. Landing gear and climbing irons locked. Inner chamber pressure rising normally. Life ring has started revolving. Ready to fire. Cancel vector cannon mode.
Unfortunately, killing a former ally for good for realsies this time makes Dingo reminisce on open comms, which was dumb because he exposed he used to be Bahram to Taper, which he doesn't take too well.
Viola was one of my teammates.
The enemy was a battle AI.
Yeah, but I'm human. Viola was a comrade. She was sometimes rash, but she was still an excellent runner.
A comrade? Hey, what did you say?
Taper.
Were you on Bahram's side?
Not now, I'm not.
Not now. What? That means you used to be with Bahram, but now you're fighting for the Space Force?
So what?
You're lying. You're still with Bahram.
Have you forgotten I saved you on Deimos?
You were seeking the guidance of Eight Heads, weren't you?
Taper, I am not with Bahram.
How can I trust you?
Despite how much we've helped him, he throws a fit, and when Ken arrives in Arjet, he distracts her with it enough for Viola to infect Ken with a virus.
What's wrong? Ken!
Run away!
Making Arjet the boss we have to purge Viola from. Doing too much damage will kill Ken, but also not doing enough damage causes the virus to damage her. So our only option is to forcefully duel her with blades, to stun her so we can grab and attempt to purge Viola. An action that takes several goes at each other, but ultimately we end her for— you know what, I refuse to believe this lady dies. She's just ubiquitous by sheer tyranny of will. Anyways, Ken's Arjet was purged of all AI, including the frame's built-in one that she needs to pilot because apparently she can't otherwise. Beating her as the first boss, it kinda makes more sense now. Sadly for us, guess what? Another escort mission. Yay. Your goal here is to drag her to the top with Jehuti by fighting all the enemies you can. They will try to kill her and knock her into the die zone, which you want to avoid. It's a pretty easy segment that isn't too hard. After, we get another nice moment with Ken, Dingo, and Ada, where they even mention Leo's a better match for Ada than Dingo.
What a troublemaker.
A good match for you.
Stop joking.
Sorry, but I have not been programmed to joke.
You really are a funny computer, aren't you?
Funny.
You and that kid Leo are far more of a perfect match.
Don't make fun of me.
Ken is also set up even more as a love interest, with her being put on Dingo's lap for most of the game after this. Fun detail, if you forcibly let her stay in the fire, she will actually have a different outfit for the rest of the game. Now that she's on her lap, she's directing us personally to Almond, but first we need an upgrade to defeat Anubis that destroys all sense of pacing and absolutely blows. I'm gonna cut through this since it really sucked and I really hated it. The first part has us going through a minefield where she's essentially Google Maps, and this destroys the pacing because it's slow and it sucks, and the mines do tons of damage, and it really is the worst part of the game. And then we go through a bunch of facilities which are really repetitive and not really remotely memorable at all, besides being the same room about 6 different times. I just really wanted that section to be over. Luckily, when you do reach the end and the boss, it's actually my favorite one in the whole game. This is the guy I showed earlier, but his fight starts out as a normal battle as he has the phase shift program we need to beat Anubis. But he can't be seen just giving it over, even if he does agree with us. We fight like normal till we reach his crazy phase in the darkness. Our only light is Jehuti's targeting system and Ada's support, which we must listen to in order to avoid damage while we slowly push forward.
Lock on to the target. Distance to the enemy, 9, 8, 7. Defend. Step to the right. Step to the right. Step to the left. Distance to the enemy, 5, 4, 3, 2. Step to the right. Step to the right. Step to the left. Distance to the enemy, 1. Enemy approaching.
Getting close enough enables us to properly fight so we can take down his frame. Once killing him, Ken leaves to retrieve the program and help him out, since in both of our states we currently cannot, which of course leads to Nomen ambushing us with Anubis, forcing us to fight as the facility tumbles down around us. The old man helps us out by taking down the facility and begging for us to escape, without Ken, who wants to continue on without our help and help the UNSF, who are preparing a final assault on Almond. The only issue is they're about to be interrupted by a fleet of warships that we must down in this really cool segment. We go from ship to ship, destroying their cannons in order to open its core for a final attack to bring it down. But you must use the vector cannon for this final blow, and if you play it smart, you can actually bring down another with a great cinematic angle if you disarm the ship and shoot across the gap.
Life ring has started revolving. Ready to fire. Cancel vector cannon mode. 4 more. Fresh battle.
Nothing difficult here once again, it's just really fun. That is until we hit our real boss of this area, Zakat. This guy has a massive laser that will destroy you, and you must avoid it. In addition, the only way to damage him is to get close to the inner parts of his orbital frame. The way you're meant to do this is to grab the panels of the side, then block the attack he does after you take him off. But if you play well enough, you can take a bunch of them off at once and then to speed up. After the current wave of them are gone, you can do damage and it's rinse and repeat the whole way till about 50% health, when he changes to a more regular fight. It's actually similar to the second boss in the first game, where you have to trade blows then dodge a big attack, namely his lasers and this thing that pulls you in. Not difficult. Just attack the head with charged attacks and you're good. We see after beating the boss along the way that Ken has been captured by Nomen, but finally making it, we link up with what's left of the UNSF forces. A small Lev force with Taper and Leo still here. And of course, Taper snitches on us, leading to most of them not entirely trusting us, including Elena, who's back again, leading the same group.
Elena?
That frame Jehuti belongs to the Space Force. Surrender it immediately!
I've been carrying out your orders, haven't I?
Our orders?
Ken Marineris, who's been hiding within Barham.
Ken Marineris. We have no such person registered with our forces.
What?
No one by that name is known to us.
Really?
She reveals that Ken and these alleged orders we had aren't really from her, and she's never actually heard of Ken before, meaning she was probably doing this all for herself. Still a noble cause, but alone. Dingo then does one of his not really great rallying speeches that somehow kinda works, then leads the group towards Almond and all the remaining enemies. enemies that you have to defeat while leading them across this line while keeping casualties to a minimum. On paper and visually, this is awesome, especially for the time, but on hard, this blows as. Not only are the levs weak and the enemies many, but there are so many targets the lock on here really struggles. It doesn't help once again friendly fire is here, so my idea of just blasting with the cannon, it didn't really work. It ended up in me killing a ton of allies. You can help as many levs as possible picking them up and charging to heal them, or use geyser on them, which will cause Leo to do it in your stead. Getting to the other side not only gives us a way in, but also settles the program we acquired earlier into Jehudi. The Zero Shift. This thing is a quick dash that gets you really close to an enemy for melee combat. It doesn't do damage, but it's necessary for some encounters at this point in the game, and is regardless great for closing gaps. Our final goal, since we are here, is to get a foothold in Almon for the team that made it with us. Ken contacts us as we delve deeper that she and Nomen are here, and that she lied, finally admitting to us that she's not who she says she is and feels bad about it.
Dingo, I lied. I'm not a spy from the Space Force, truly. I'm just a Bahram runner.
So it seems.
Aren't you surprised?
I told you. Spies cannot survive under Nomen. But why did you lie?
I didn't expect you would trust me. You wouldn't believe that I was just a soldier trying to revolt.
Right, it's totally crazy.
My father was also a soldier, of Bahram. He was in your unit.
What?
They said my father died on duty at Callisto. I wanted to know why, and for what my father had died. So I joined Bahram and approached Nomen. My father had died for the Almon project. I realized that, but I couldn't do anything. I'm not like you. I'm not as popular.
A moment we can't really share as Nomen interrupts us and challenges us to a final fight. And let's talk about Nomen real quick. So what exactly is with this guy? And I mean this seriously as a question at this point, because honestly at this point in the game, if you don't watch any of the outside media, you genuinely have zero idea what his plan is. He just kind of feels like an evil villain for the sake of being an evil villain, rather than an actual person with motives. Besides, get fucked lol, like he has zero real development. He's just kind of a character that exists to be the bad guy. But reaching the center, we finally fight against Anubis. Except something's off. It's not hard, like at all, and the runner is quiet. Something Dingo notices at health right before Leo of all people swoops in and gets his ass kicked by a second Anubis? That's right. The one we were fighting was an autonomous copy piloted by Ken, something Nomen relishes as he reveals we aren't even in the real Almon. The real Almon is Phobos, and this is just a control facility. He reveals his intent is to destroy Mars, for reasons, I guess. Almon is then used to transport us, Ken, Nomen, and Leo to Phobos, and during this teleport phase, we are fighting while flying there. And in order to bridge that gap to hit Anubis due to the speed of Anubis in the teleport, we need to use that phase shift to shift as close as possible while dodging Anubis's insane ranged attacks. But eventually, we prevail and disable Anubis as we reach Moonside. We're in a dogpile of ruined orbital frames. We fight for Jehudi and Dingo's survival with Elena, and she agrees, since they would much rather Dingo destroy Almon and save Jehudi. Dingo agrees to work with them, but only if the UNSFs just stops their oppression and interference with Bahram. Wanting to stop this progressively escalating conflict where realistically, besides crazy military oligarchy that went a little too funky, it could work out for everybody. But we are interrupted by the fact Anubis still functions, but because of course it does. But he sinks into the moon? And this turns out to be Nomen's real goal.
The real power of Almon is not to attack the surface using compressed space.
What?
The real power is from energy constriction. It makes the best use of Metatron's superiority. Space compression. That energy will swallow the entire solar system.
That's serious.
No shit.
Please, stop it now.
Yeah, I don't know why he's going like the Omnicide route, but he is, and we gotta deal with him once and for all. So oh, son of a bitch, she's back. How? Why? You know, we're not gonna think about it. All you need to know is junk enemies that aren't strong, and the game getting used to not having sub-weapons besides phase shift. Defeating these schmucks leads us to Nomen using Anubis to proceed with destroying the galaxy. And this is the for real final battle. It's quite simple, despite you only having the phase shift, which you should use as a gap closer and push damage as fast as possible. During the fight, he'll periodically use long-range attacks and heal using the same shield mechanic from earlier. But here you can cancel some while healing yourself, by grabbing the shields he uses to heal and charge them just like you would heal a Lev. Kind of cool that using recurring mechanics, and I actually did like this as it builds up over time and feels like you're actually learning. But this boss does kind of end up being fairly simple and easy, and kind of a shadow of what the teleport phase was like. But even when defeating Nomen, we seem to be too late, with the energy expanding and Ada activating self-destruct. Something Leo doesn't want to allow, and it just plows straight into the giant ball of death in front of us, managing to shrink it if just for a moment. Ada, wanting to self-destruct, continues with the plan, but Dingo begs for her to let him try to stop it and not to just throw her life away, not wanting to leave anyone else behind like he did to his whole squad. She obliges and lets the timer run, and we get this weird sequence where Dingo does something.
Created to destroy all.
Dingo wakes up later on the Atlantis we've heard about from both games, with everyone present if a little beating up, with Leo getting reunited with his robot girlfriend, and Dingo seemingly get a real girlfriend and life support as well, with hope for a new future that allegedly the deal struck will remain held.
Mission power would be even too. That thing is better suited for that role.
Did I disobey orders?
Never mind, Ada.
What?
It's okay.
Use power for the right things. At least for the things that you believe in.
So who's second hand?
Your father. This time, make my body normal.
Don't you like it as it is?
That's way too big.
You got it.
I trust you.
And that's where Kojima's Zone of the Enders franchise ends, on a relatively high note. At this point, there really isn't much for you to do either, besides the extra missions you unlock to play as different characters, which are fun, multiplayer, which is okay if you can get another person to do it with you, or the garage, which, to be honest, I don't really actually understand what this does. There's a cool couple of secret things you can also find, like a new model viewer, which I couldn't get to work, but I know it's there. After finally getting through these games, I truthfully can say I kind of regret not trying these earlier. They're incredibly memorable, not just because of its distinctive style, but also it's fantastic gameplay you won't see anywhere else. And I can say, despite all its faults, you really should try both games, especially since you can get the collection on modern consoles now as well, or at least pick up the second runner, as I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Hell, I bought it on the Steam sale for like $4. If anything, these games are so good it makes me sad the Kojima incident with Konami happened, as there was a Zone of the Enders 3 that was cancelled, and it's likely we will never see one again, but who knows given Konami's apparently making games again, but we'll have to see if any of what they're working on will actually be good and justify them doing more outside of Metal Gear and Silent Hill. So for now, all we can do is hope and appreciate these older games for what they are and represented. And that's it for me. If you made it to the end, drop a sub, like, comment, join the Discord and all that for the almighty algorithm machine spirit. I recently hit 2K subs, which is just wow, and I have no words besides thank you so much. And I can't wait to make more content for y'all that you'll hopefully enjoy, including streams where I play all sorts of games and the ones I do videos on. And speaking of videos, I will be finally checking out the only real Mecha Xenoblade Chronicles game next, Xenoblade X. So I hope to see you there.